In this video, I'm building this rolling miter saw station. I did a lot of things in this build that weren't strictly necessary when building a miter saw station, but I had two goals in mind when taking this project on. One was add storage to the shop. I got a small shop and I don't have much in the way of drawer storage, and this is going to be extremely helpful going forward. And two is practice woodworking. I've got some other woodworking projects in mind, and this was an excellent opportunity to practice some of my skills. For storage, I wanted to build some really heavy-duty drawers and practice using drawer sliders. I also wanted to try and grain match the front face. That's where the grain continuously runs across the front face as if it was still one piece of material. I also added a poplar edge across the front face of the top, and this was to practice adding some contrast and working with some different materials and just practice some different joining methods. New to me for this build was edge banding, so I applied edge banding to all of the edges of the plywood on the drawer faces and the tabletops and the sides of the cabinets to give it a nicer, cleaner look. I also chose to use Danish Oil on this whole build, so I don't have a ton of finishing experience either. I've done some small finish projects, and I really wanted to take the opportunity to really practicing applying finish to a large project to see how that turned out. So join me as I walk through this build, and I'll show you all the things I learned, and hopefully you'll learn something along the way, and maybe it'll inspire you to tackle a project like this as well.
And remember, if you find this video helpful and you want to see more like it, please take a moment to subscribe or even leave me a comment. This build, like a lot of projects, starts with ripping down larger sheets of material. I used a Kreg rip cut circular saw guide along with my battery-powered DeWalt saw, and I found this combination to work pretty good. My shop, though technically big enough to feed a full-size sheet of plywood over my table saw, it's kind of hard to do if you're by yourself. And here's the first rookie mistake of the video. I set my circular saw depth before I put it on the rip cut jig, so it didn't go all the way through the plywood and I had to start the cut again. Now you might see that my workshop doubles as a home gym in the background, so I tried not to make too much of a mess out of it while doing these cuts. So I found a quick vac at the top of the sheet between cuts, kept a lot of this dust down. These sheets I'm breaking down to be the body of the cabinets. They're going to form the bottom, the top, and both sides. And as much as I wanted to run out and buy a track saw for this build, it really wasn't necessary for the number of cuts I needed, so clamping a straight edge to the material worked just fine. Alright, and here's the first appearance of why I'm going to struggle later in the video. This sheet of plywood is not very flat, and I think that comes down to how I stored the material. I stacked these 4 sheets against one another in my very dry basement, and I think that led this sheet to warp pretty badly. A few more rip cuts later, and I can start prepping these sheets for assembly. And by prepping, I mean drill lots and lots of pocket holes. If you watched some of my other videos, you saw me make these 90-degree brackets to hold the box together while I'm assembling it, and they came in extra handy. A lot like that track saw, I thought I could make do with what I had, but these 24-inch clamps just aren't going to work on this cabinet because they're 24.5 inches wide. There's some hasty off-camera improv. I came up with this Z-shaped clamp extender. Feel free to steal this idea if your clamps come up short like mine did. So why all these clamps? Well, when I drive pocket screws, I find they pull the wood out of alignment, but fortunately I came up with a better solution just a little bit later.
So the other thing I should have done is use my workmate, not the workbench, as an assembly station, because I made things very hard on myself by not being able to walk completely around the would-be box. So, lesson learned. Learning a lot of good things on my first time building cabinets.
So here we have another view of these 90-degree brackets coming in handy. Do yourselves a favor, if you're gonna build cabinets or boxes of any kind, make something like this first. I found them invaluable. So after a bunch of faffing around with clamps, I remember I have a brad nailer, which makes life so much easier, temporarily holding these cabinets in the right place and then driving the pocket screws. This is definitely one of those tools that you can live without, but it just makes life a lot easier.
So I'm not 100% sure how I'm putting this together yet because I haven't built boxes before. Watched a lot of tutorials, took some notes, but figuring it out for yourself is part of the fun, at least I think so. So you're probably going to see me struggle a little bit, and I think that's okay. What's important is that we improve. So let's see what happens.
So my camera battery's about to die and gonna save us all from the worst of the struggling, but it actually didn't go all that bad. I lined up all the corners and Brad nailed them in place, and then was able to pocket screw the whole end together. So in general, I was pretty happy for my first attempt. Alright, so in case you missed it, we are gonna glue, nail, persuade, nail some more, and then we're ready to screw off the bottom.
All dialed off, which means I can screw the bottom, and one box is done.
So I think by this stage, you guys know what this looks like, so we are gonna speed through box number 2.
All right, so it's about a week later. I'm picking back up on working on the cabinets, and I spent a lot of time focusing on putting the good faces out. And in doing so, I didn't pay attention to how these bowed. And I think regardless if they bowed in or out, I created a problem for myself. So the back is perfect. But the front is gonna need a little bit of a helping hand. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut a middle shelf. I'm gonna have drawers in here, but I'm gonna cut a divider to go in the middle here and help straighten this out. So that's my new next step.
2 quick cuts later and we're back to assembling.
All right, so to start this off, I've got a 2x4 blocked off on either end of the cabinet, and I'm pulling the bow out so I can get the shelf in and not fight it. So next I'm going to use my 90-degree clamps here, or not 90-degree clamps, yeah, clamp brackets. I'm going to use these as a helping hand to get to the shelf where it needs to be. And yeah, see if we can brad nail it in place and then pocket screw it. So fingers crossed that this works out.
Time to put the plan to work.
Well, that actually did work pretty good. So it's better, but you can see I've still got like, come down to the bottom here, maybe a 1/16 of a bow. I know it's quote unquote shop furniture, but the goal is to get it as good as possible as part of practicing. And I guess it'll do, but I would have liked a little better because the back is spot on. There is perfectly square. I got no space in the top, none in the back. Come back to the front. So no space in the top, and then down at the bottom. Got like a 1/16. So room for improvement here. I've learned I need to pay better attention to the bow and the sides when I'm assembling the cabinets. Maybe bow them both out so I can pull them in with this under shelf if I need to be, because I had one out and one in on this cabinet. And I think that's what I'm really fighting against. So lesson learned. At least my next pantry build, or my pantry build, should go a little easier because, well, a little bit more about the order of operations here.
Time to break down a little more material, then I can join these 2 cabinets together. I'm going to start by gluing and pocket screwing a bottom panel in, then I'll work on the back and then the top. You'll notice this back panel is shorter than the two sides, and that's so when the miter saw sits in the center, the top of the miter saw is flush with the top of the two left and right cabinets. These homemade corner braces are coming in handy again. They're holding the top in place so I can brad nail it, and then pocket screw it in place. With the body of the cabinet done, it's time to roll this over and work on the base and adding some wheels. If you haven't seen it, check out my small shop dust collection video. I use this Bluetooth switch to turn on and off the vacuum, and it makes life a lot easier. After installing 2x4s around the perimeter of the cabinet, I installed 8 casters so the cabinet would have plenty of support. Took a long time to get to this point, so it's time for a test fit.
All right, so I got the bulk of the cabinet done. I think next I'm going to be tackling drawers before I do the final top. I'm pretty happy with the progress. Got a little more cleaning to do so it actually fits properly over here. Right now it's just pushed back, but it fits the space really well. This is pretty deep, so I can keep some of my wood storage, my 4x8 sheets underneath, my rack storage here, and I still have plenty of clearance. So I am pretty happy with how this is coming together. So for drawer slides, I got these low tan, soft close drawer slides on Amazon. A 10 pack was $108. You can get fewer, but they get more expensive. And first impressions are these are actually pretty nice. All right, so far I've marked out the dividing lines between my drawers on the cabinets so I can get a rough idea of where I'm going to put the drawer slides. And I've seen lots of different methods for how to put the drawer slides in place. I've seen things like use a big speed square or use a square, mark the location and lay your cabinet on its side. That's not very practical in this case. I ended up just splurging for some Kreg drawer slide attachment, box attachment holders here. I think this is just going to be help with my sanity. It might not be necessary, so I'm going to go through it. I think this is just more of a crutch or comfort level thing for me today because this is my first time doing it. So I'm not saying go out and get these if you're building a cabinet. These were $27 and I thought if they come in handy, I'm going to be loving it. And if I'm struggling, I'm going to be kicking myself for having not bought something that might make my life easier. So if you're like me, you're willing to try some of this stuff out if it's reasonably priced. This was borderline for me, but I got some other cabinets I'm planning to build in the future, so hopefully these will pay for themselves in terms of time, and we'll see. For the bottom drawers, paint sticks are going to be my spacers. So 2 of these stacked up are roughly the same spacer distance on the end of these Kreg fixtures here. So we're going to give this a shot and keep joining me for the ride.
So the paint sticks actually worked out really well. I laid 2 of them across the bottom of the cabinet, extended the drawer slide, and drove the screws in. But this sound just about sums up the experience of crawling around on the floor and stuffing my head in the cabinet.
Oh.
The drawer slides that weren't on the bottom were pretty much the same process. I attached the Kreg brackets, laid the drawer slides on top, fully extended them, and drove in the screws.
So 1 drawer slide in, these are actually super helpful. There are probably some other tools that make this just as easy, but very happy so far. Totally worth the 27 bucks.
So this is pretty straightforward, so let's use the magic of editing to speed through this. This is one of those little shop tools that just really comes in handy. It's a magnetizer and a demagnetizer, and you just run your bit or your screwdriver through it, and it helps you hang on to screws while attaching them to things. Here's to hopefully dropping less screws when finishing these drawer slides.
It's a little better. Remag the bit.
Alright, let's rip through the rest of these drawer slides.
so I'm most of the way through installing my drawer slides. I've got to wait a little bit for the last two because I only ordered a 10-pack, and then I decided late yesterday that I wasn't going to do two big drawers in the middle. I thought at first that was my game plan because this is shorter. Instead, I'm going to do 3 drawers the same size as both sides, and then one really shallow drawer on top.
On to the drawer boxes, and just like the other steps in this build, we're going to start by breaking down some material. Here I'm going to use the same 23 30-second material I use for the rest of this build. That way I can load up these drawers and not worry about what I'm putting in them. And to follow that theme about not worrying about it, I am loading up these drawer bottoms with pocket holes. It's time to rip down the sides of the drawers. Now, if you're like me and you've got a battery-powered saw, make sure you're checking it off, and otherwise you're going to end up like me and running out of juice halfway through a cut. Now, the miter station might not be done yet, but it is still super handy. With this improvised stop block, I can start cutting the drawer fronts and drawer sides. And my stop block might be a little crude. It is just a 2x4 clamped to the tabletop, but it was really exciting to use this for the first time.
So I had set up a temporary stop block to cut all the sides. I just adjusted it so I can cut all the fronts and backs. And yeah, off to the races. This first piece, I'm going to test fit. And why the test fit? It's because I haven't built drawers before, and this seems to be the safe, easy way to make sure that all my drawer slides are positioned correctly and that I'm cutting the width of the fronts and backs correctly. So a little double or triple check never hurt. Oh yeah, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Time to give the drawer sides the same pocket hole treatment as the bottoms. Like the cabinet boxes, I am going to glue, brad nail, and then screw these together. Brad nails just temporarily hold everything in place so the pocket holes, when screwed in, don't pull everything out of alignment. Alright, before I assemble the rest of the boxes, it's finally time to see if I know what I'm doing. The test fit went well, it's time to screw on the drawer slides.
So this is super satisfying. First drawer goes in and it just works. It's really nice when you research a project and it just starts to come together.
So let's rip through the rest of these drawer boxes and get them installed. So instead of propping this box up on the bottom of the cabinet off of paint sticks as my spacer, I'm using the Kreg fixtures clamped to the sides of the cabinet, and it worked just as smoothly.
All right, so I got all the major drawer boxes done, and now I'm just going to do the one shallow drawer that's going to be going right here under the miter station. And it's going to be pretty shallow, but I think I can find some tools to fit in there. So it's time for edge banding, and I'm keeping it pretty simple. So I just picked up some edge banding at Home Depot and an edge banding trimmer. This guy is, I mean, maybe this is good, but it strikes me as a little cheap, but it did the job, at least on my test piece. So there's no better way than to just dive right in and practice at this point. So that's what I'm gonna do.
So after a few more practice pieces, it didn't seem to do a great job. So I switched to the flush trimming bit on my router, and that worked very well. So that's the method I used for the rest of the project. So edge banding didn't strike me as very difficult, more as just an exercise in patience. Each step takes some time, and you just gotta be prepared to take your time with it. So this is iron-on edge banding. I put tin foil on the bottom of the iron, that way my wife doesn't get upset when there's glue all over it. And then I tried to provide a kind of slow, uniform heat and pressure to the whole edge banding. Took a scrap block of wood and provided a lot more pressure just to make sure everything is seated really well while the glue is cooling down. Trim the excess off with the flush trim router bit. And then just very gently broke the edges with my orbital sander.
All right, so for my first piece, this seems to be coming out pretty good. I like using the router better than I do the trimmer I bought. Fortunately, the trimmer was only like 10 bucks. I think it's doing a cleaner job. I don't feel like I'm tearing it as much as I am trimming it. Definitely got some more practice to do. There was one corner here. Yeah, this back corner, you can see in the light here, has a little hole in it. So I'll probably have to fill that. Fortunately, it's the back of what's gonna be the drawer face. But yeah, I mean, as a practice piece and getting good at edge banding, yeah, this has been a good little learning experience. So we're gonna power through all of these. Hopefully by the end, I'm a little bit more of an expert at this. And then when I go to do it on something other than shop furniture, it's gonna look a lot better than what I got going here. But honestly, this is looking pretty good. All right, so I'm learning a hard lesson in terms of order of operations. I should have done the drawer slides after doing the edge banding on the face frame. That was kind of an afterthought, something I wanted to practice doing. And it is something I still want to do, so I'm going to attempt to work around all these drawer slides. There is no guarantee that that is going to go well though. So we're going to try and work around these that now all sit proud of the face frame when the drawers are out. But I think having some of them out might be helpful. I obviously can't have both of them out and get that on. So yeah, I'm gonna try and do the face frames and we'll see how this goes. All right, so this is totally doable. It's just definitely a bit more of a pain in the butt. It would have been, well, like I said earlier, knowing the order of operations definitely would have been key to making my life a little easier. Definitely doable with the drawer slides on, definitely not ideal. So next time I build a cabinet, I know the correct order of operations now, and that's gonna be to include edge banding or the face frame before I do this.
It's time for the top, so let's break down some more material.
So I can swing my saw clean and clear in one direction, but not in the other. So what I think I'm going to do is use a block. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a block to cut this edge back. So I can mark it. But this isn't quite going to be my cut. I also have some edge banding, or I'm going to edge this with a piece of poplar, just to kind of give it some contrast and to practice edging. So I'm going to take this . All right, and this second line is what I need to cut off my top. So I'll have an edge here, and then I'm going to miter it, and it's going to come back over here.
So for the top, I am gluing and then screwing these extra sheets of plywood in place. My original plan, or I should say my long-term plan, includes doing a laminate top. However, the contact adhesive requires a well-ventilated area, and it's just too cold out to be well-ventilating my whole shop. Here's another scenario where having longer clamps would have been super handy, but I just improvised.
All right, so I decided I wanted to put an edge on this, just kind of practice edging something like a countertop, because I'm going to be doing a pantry build later, and I thought it would just be fun. So I'm going to glue this in place and then use a couple brads as well. I think this is going to be strong enough. This is going to be one of those live and learn scenarios. So this edge will be here and on both sides, and it's going to overhang enough to keep dust from falling down in the top drawers. That was particularly important to me, as I wanted the counter to overhang the top. So
Time for a little more gluing, improvised clamping, and screwing for the left and right sides of the tabletop.
All right, so I intentionally built the center portion of the table lower than the two sides because I knew I wanted to shim it up because I figured getting it exactly the right height was going to be pretty hard. So what I ended up doing is I have some washers that are going to go under the mounting holes, and I can stack the appropriate number to make the top of the table level with the sides, and then all I'll have to do is get them in place. And now I have a perfectly flush top. So before I finish dialing the height, I'm pretty close to where I want to be. But what I'd really like to do is start to really dial in the position, and then I'll finish the edge banding on the front. So to dial in the position, I've got a piece of wood that is coming across the fence, and then I'm going to square it to the table, essentially with the tape. So I've got this long piece across the fence, and then I know I am 3 7/8 on this side, and I am 4 1/2 on this side. So pretty significant adjustment needs to be made here. I'm gonna keep playing with this a little bit, get the position dialed in, and then, yeah, I can drill the holes for this and get it screwed in place. Piece of my top that I've got here right now that does not include the edge banding, I'm really gonna have closer to 8 inches in front of the saw fence. So I think that's gonna be the appropriate balance for me. This particular saw has a lot of real depth to it. It's not one of these newer, I think it's the Makita or the Milwaukee that's got that like zero clearance in the back. I'm still really, really thrilled with this saw, but it's not gonna be pushed way back. To be determined on shelves or other tools left and right of the saw. That's gonna be worked out at a later date.
Here, I'm using a small transfer punch to mark the location of the holes to be drilled. And then pre-drilling for a couple of lags. Time for some more glue, and then brad nails while it dries. Time for the final piece of edging. After making the first cut, I use my miter saw protractor. Essentially, it finds the angle and then divides it by 2 to make making the cut a little easier. I can then flip the saw and make the corresponding cut for the other piece. And now the same as before, plenty of glue and some brad nails to hold it in place while it dries.
Time to wait for the glue to dry, but good start on the top and the edge. Pretty happy with how this is coming together.
One last step for the top, I'm going to run a quick chamfer around the top and bottom edge just to soften it a little bit.
All right, for stain, I am using some Watco Danish Oil. I've done a couple test runs with this, and it's pretty straightforward. Basically, I've sanded the wood, I've dusted or tack clothed the wood really well, trying to make sure it's nice and clean. This needs to be shaken or stirred before you use it. And then the goal is to keep this wet, essentially, for 15-ish minutes while it really soaks in. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. I'm gonna get these pieces covered, keep them damp with the Danish oil. That gives it time to penetrate. And then once that's done, I'm gonna wipe it off. So I am 15 minutes in. These have stayed wet the entire time with the brush. It actually took basically constantly working it for 15 minutes. So doing the rest of this miter saw station is going to be an interesting exercise, but overall not too difficult. And now I'm going to use a rag to essentially wipe off the excess. And we're going to keep doing that for a while as well. So we're going to wipe off all the excess, and then we're going to want to make sure we come back and wipe off the excess again. So anything that leaches back out of the surface. A couple more important things to keep in mind is these rags should be put in a safe place. They are combustible, so do not leave them crumpled up in a ball in your trash can. That's not the way to treat these. All right, off to a pretty good start. Hopefully you can really see the color difference here. That really does make it pop. Definitely very golden, so you gotta like that. But I am very happy with these. All right, so I started with the lower of the three surfaces. That way when I'm doing this and I accidentally drip on here, the Dutch oil won't leave a spot and dry, and then I'll have an uneven finish. I'll be able to just wipe it up and it should be fine. So I'm gonna try not to have any drips from the top surface down, but I thought bottom up would be a safe way to tackle this. So this stuff has been absorbing an absolute ton of the Danish oil. So my pro tip would be make sure you've got enough before you start each section. I was about to do this piece and I checked what I had left in the can and I wouldn't have got through this. So particularly if this is your first time through, make sure you've got some extra ready to go. All right, I'm onto this somewhat hard part here. It's attaching the drawer faces to the drawer fronts. So to support the whole bottom course, what I've done is I've shimmed up a 2x4 right underneath the leading edge. That way I can simply lay these first drawer faces right where they need to go. Then I'm going to try to temporarily attach them to these, the drawer boxes. That will allow me to then pull them open, screw them in from the back, and then I'm going to use cards. So I think we've all seen the card method before. So I've got some cards and I'm going to equally space them 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces going up. So let's get to it. So the other thing I tried to do is grain match these. So there is a very specific order that this will all go. And if I make sure I keep the edge bending up, that would be an embarrassing mistake. I'll be able to lay everything out and screw it in place. So on this side, gap's a little tighter than I thought. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm going to do is I've got an uneven amount of cards here based on my setup here. I would prefer the top edge be level as opposed to the bottom edge, which is going to be harder to see. So since I'm 10 cards here and 14 here, I'm going to shim this side up 4 cards. So this gut checks, this works out very good. Something I did not take into account was my edge banding. I thought my gaps were gonna be much bigger than what I've got. Without the edge banding, I think my gaps would have been much better than they are now. They're gonna be a bit tight.
Just 2 drawer faces, and a few moments later, we discover that they are in fact too tight.
They're just too tight. So what I think I'm gonna do is reverse the direction I was working. I'm gonna set the gaps at the top and then work my way down. So we'll see how that goes.
And I got pretty lucky doing this method. So I was able to set appropriate gaps working top down, and then that bottom drawer front simply hung into the kick space by maybe 1/4 of an inch. So it really wasn't that bad. It doesn't eat into the kick space, but it was a good way to cheat it.
Last drawer, I wanted to be real confident about its size, and I was gonna cut last. And I thought I was being smart and I edge banded it, but I need to cut it and then edge band it. So that's what we're gonna do now, is cut it, and then I need to reapply the edge band and re-Danish Oil the top. So not a big deal. I just forgot that this one needed to get cut and then get the edge banding on. But it's definitely starting to come together, and I'm really happy with how this is coming out. The drawers, it gets easier as you go. So the card method works, the tape method works. There's definitely some faffing around.
A quick cut and some edge banding later, I am back to attaching cabinet drawer faces.
So for hardware, I picked up some cabinet hardware off of Amazon. This box of 30 pieces was like $20 or $22. I think they were less than 75 cents a piece. The hardware I bought for a previous project was significantly more than that. They were about $5 a piece. So I didn't think my miter saw station warranted $5 a piece drawer pulls, but we're gonna see how these perform, and if I don't like them, I can always upgrade, because 3 inches is standard spacing. Now to drill the holes, like everyone else on the internet, I went out and I bought a Kreg fixture. So this will take some of the anxiety of getting the hole placement right out of the equation. It's really simple. This sits on the top of the drawer. I can center it and I get my hole spacing right. So I probably could have made a jig, but why make a jig when I think this was $25? So I had such a great time with the drawer slide ones. I figured couldn't hurt to get one more and see how it goes. So I definitely am planning to build some more cabinets in the future. So this isn't a one-time purchase and done. This will get some more use later. So I felt like I could justify it. So what's the next steps on this project? Ideally is going to be some kind of fence. I'm still debating what that's going to look like and debating what's going to be behind that fence. Are there going to be additional tools mounted up here? Is there going to be some sort of storage mounted up here? I think what I've decided to do for now is I'm going to get some practice using this under my belt. I'm going to just kind of experience using it as it is, and then decide what my workflow needs. Maybe I really need more storage and that's what it's going to be, or maybe I can, save for a little small shop bandsaw and that'll be over here. So let me know what you guys did for your own miter saw stations if you have one. I'd really like to get some ideas on what kind of things I could incorporate into the top of the table. So thanks for watching this one, guys. This one has really been a kind of a passion project and a long time coming. This took several weeks to get together. So more projects like this coming. So if you're still watching, I would love if you'd like or subscribe to the video. That definitely helps a lot. And stick around for more.